an age where we know more than we ever have before about child development, about the importance of good parenting, and about the terrible consequences of child abuse and neglect. At a time in human history when we have greater affluence, better access to education, a plethora of high-tech amenities and a multitude of social services, we in New Zealand are confronting truly shocking statistics for domestic violence, child abuse and neglect. In fact, in this year alone, in just 1 month, there were 6,000 reported incidents of child abuse to child, youth and family. And of course we can assume that there were countless other cases that were never reported. How can this be? Why are so many of our families and children vulnerable and at risk?
Kia ora, welcome to Baha'i On Air. I'm Bev Watson. Today we have the special privilege of speaking with Jenny Hindin-Miller. Jenny is the director of Karanga Young Parents College in North Canterbury. Welcome to Baha'i On Air, Jenny. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you, Bev.
Jenny, how did you come to be involved in a school for young parents?
Well, I was working in the 1990s as a support worker in North Canterbury, working with teenage parents, and in 1996, a couple of the young women with whom I was working came to me and they said that they would really like a bit of support with some schooling that they were thinking of doing. And because my background had been in secondary school teaching, I hadn't been a teacher for a number of years, but that was my first training, and then my subsequent training was as a social worker and as a counsellor. But when they came to me and said that they'd really like to do a bit of study, I was very excited because you can't repress a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So I thought, okay, well, I'll set up a small study group to support these young women in their plans. And so I set up this little study group and we met a couple of times a week and we had the children with us and it was all very small scale and homegrown. We were in a rented church hall at the time. And we developed, and I was very fortunate to be supported by quite a forward-looking community trust in Waimakariri, and so they supported me to grow this little study group, and we grew and we grew and we became a school. And now today we're a full-time school for teenage parents, and we, after a very long struggle, convinced the Ministry of Education that this was a worthy project to support. There were only 2 schools in New Zealand in the 1990s, so it was a very kind of new and quite a challenging concept for the Ministry of Education to get their heads around, but they saw the real success that we were having with our young parents, you know, that these young people were actually continuing with their education, which, you know, was a big thing because so many of the young women with whom we were working had left school early. They had no school qualifications and really had no kind of hope of ever continuing with their school studies once they had children. So because of the success of the work that we were doing, the ministry agreed to fund us gradually, slowly, and now today we have full funding as a school, and because of the funding from the Ministry of Education, there are now 17 schools for teenage parents in New Zealand and 5 more currently under development. So it's a successful concept which is much needed in New Zealand because, as you probably know, New Zealand has the 2nd highest rate of births to teen parents in the OECD, and so we have a lot of teenage parents in New Zealand, and so many of them you know, have not completed their schooling and really need the educational support that we have to offer them.
So tell me about that. What is the educational support that you do give to your young parents? Well,
we really, in many ways, are like an ordinary school. We're not like an ordinary school too, there are a lot of differences, but the young parents, when they come to us, they're able to continue with their secondary schooling, to do NCEA Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, just your normal range of school subjects, and some of our young parents also do tertiary A-level studies, and we have a fantastic success rate with our young parents. So many of them go on from our school to tertiary level education, either at polytechs or at universities, and because we've been operating for a long time now, since the 1990s, we have graduates in nursing and midwifery and commerce and the arts, and
That's fantastic.
Yes, that's
and how do you
great.
integrate the children into the educational system that the parents are experiencing? Okay,
well, when I set up this little study group, obviously, if you're going to be working with young parents, you have to be working with the children as well. If you don't have something for the children, you're not going to be able to support the parents. So we set up an early childhood centre as part of the school that we established, and in fact our early childhood centre was the first centre to be licensed as part of the young parents, as part of a teen parent unit in New Zealand. So that was a first for New Zealand, and now of course that's an integral component of all the teen parents units that are established around New Zealand.
So your school was a bit of a pioneering effort.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
And I mean, it's really important to be working with the children. I mean, the children are so precious, and if they weren't having access to this early childhood education, they wouldn't be having that experience. Many teen parents are quite reluctant to let other people look after their children, and so their children wouldn't have that access to early childhood education, and it's such a vital opportunity for these children. I mean, it really enriches their lives, and our teachers are highly qualified teachers, and they offer this wonderful opportunity to the children. And
how does it work on a practical day-to-day basis? What's the interaction between the parent and the child from when they start school in the morning?
Okay, so we have the early childhood centre, and right next door we have the school for the young parents, so they're connected. And the children go into the early childhood centre at the beginning of the day. The young parents start their schooling program, and then at lunchtime the mums feed their children together. So that's a very important part of our daily program, because of course we're not into separating the mothers and children. And any young mums who've got babies in the early learning centre, if they're breastfeeding, they're able to go into the centre and feed their own children. They can access their children whenever they want to, so we're very relaxed about that. So they're able to go in and out of the centre, and we do activities together with children and mums as well as part of our program. So that's a very important part of what we do. We're obviously not just supporting our young parents with their academic education, we're supporting them as parents. So parenting is a very important part of the focus of our program.
So it's academic, it's teaching them about parenting skills, but you also do things with the arts and physical outdoor activities and all that kind of thing?
Yes, we do. We try to really meet all of the needs of the young people that we're working with. So we emphasise healthy lifestyles. We do a lot of sport and physical activity. We have a focus on healthy food, and we always have healthy food available at the school. We obviously focus on the arts too, because that's really important, and we do a lot of things to try and develop young people's personal skills and their social skills as well. We use virtues as part of our daily program, and that works really well with our young people, focus on virtues. So we're really working with their physical and social and emotional and intellectual and spiritual selves, and trying to develop all of those
very
aspects.
Holistic.
Yeah,
yes.
It does.
And they teach, they learn budgeting skills and so on as
yes,
well. It's all part of the whole thing.
Yeah, it is. We bring a lot of services in to the school to support our young parents. So we bring in things like Plunket and budgeting and counselling and work and income, any services which we feel that our young people need to support them. Now, as a Baha'i and as a teacher, I am fully aware of the immense value and impact of education on people's lives. The Baha'i writings describe mothers as the first educators, the first mentors. Truly, it is the mothers who determine the happiness, the future greatness, the learning and judgment, the understanding of their little ones. United Nations research identifies the education level of the mother as the single most important factor, the single most important indicator of the future success and well-being of her children. Baha'i teachings reinforce this research by identifying the primacy of female children's rights to education because of their vital role in the education and well-being of their own future families. So it goes without saying that in any attempt that we might make to protect and support vulnerable families, education has to be a key stratagem and a key component.
In case you've just joined us, you're watching Baha'i on Air. We have the special privilege today of speaking with Jenny Hindin-Miller, who is the director of Karanga Young Parents College in North Canterbury. Jenny, so tell us, what are some of the challenges that these young parents face during their school years and also when they first leave your school?
Well, young, teenage parents have many challenges that I guess which contribute to them becoming teenage parents really in the first place. As I've already said, they often leave school early and have not been maybe successful in their own schooling. Of course, I'm generalising here because obviously everyone has their own unique story, but as well they may have come from a family background of some disadvantage. They are likely to have been the children of teenage mothers themselves. They may have substance abuse issues, mental health issues, perhaps sexual abuse issues. And as well in today's society, because women in New Zealand today are having their children much later than in the past, teenage mothers are regarded as being very young to have children, because the average age of first parenting in New Zealand is now, I think, between 28 and 30. So a teenage mother is regarded as being extremely young, and so they get there's a lot of social stigma attached to being a young parent, and that's very isolating. As well, they're isolated from their own peer group by being a parent themselves. So they struggle with a lot of these challenges. They come into school with the support of very, very dedicated staff and the environment that we really try to create for them, which is a very loving and affirming environment. And because their children really blossom in our early childhood centre, it is a very supportive environment. So they really blossom in that environment, and then they develop a lot of courage and they develop a lot of pride in what they're doing, and then they venture out into the world, usually to further education, and that's scary for them because they've been in this, they've often been at school at our school for maybe 3 or more years. So it's quite an adjustment to go on from this kind of community support out into the world, and so we do what we can to support them in that transition, and we have a real open door policy. So if they need support when they're studying, once they've left school, they can always come back to us for a day a week if they want to, a day a fortnight, and we'll support them with their ongoing study. And we do have a number of our young parents who use that support. We do offer a transition to work programs, so we have work placements for our young students who are going on into the workforce as well to support them in that transition. So what are the key components of our success, and what makes this a successful early intervention model working to support vulnerable families? First of all, our school has a culture of success, as I think you have gathered from the stories we've shared. It has a culture of success and hope and aspiration, and we take great pride in flouting the negative stereotypes of teenage parents on the DPB. Secondly, it is a very supportive environment, and not only are the staff absolutely dedicated to supporting these young families, but the young women created this wonderful support group for each other, and they develop lifelong friendships, and their children have all these aunties that I've been talking about, which they wouldn't have had otherwise. So school is really their whānau, it's their village, it's their community. The experience of attending school is intensive, and it's kind of a form of total immersion really, 4 to 5 days a week for 1 to 3 or more years. And this has a huge impact on the young women and children's lives. And I think that this total immersion aspect of what we do is really necessary to supporting real change and real transformation in people's lives and to protecting vulnerable families. And it's often the ingredient that is missing in the support services that are available in today's society. As well, we create this kind of loving and safe and disciplined environment which is like a normative standard against which the women can evaluate their own hopes and realities. And this is in really stark contrast to the often chaotic lives of many of the young women and children who come to us. So it creates a sort of normal environment, and then because it becomes their normal reality, they're then able to actually evaluate their own lives and make change. And this is a powerful kind of weapon in the armoury of change. The school engenders a love of learning and a positive attitude to education, and this is really visible in the delighted little faces of our children as they tumble off the minibuses every morning and queue at the Early Childhood Centre, just waiting for the doors to open each day. So the children love to be at school, and they know their mums are at school, and that's a fantastic role model for them. This love of learning and this positive attitude to school has intergenerational benefits, and it really is cycle-breaking stuff.
Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, a little bit about your personal history and what attracted you to the Baha'i faith. When did you become a Baha'i, that kind of thing?
Okay. Well, as I said, my first career was as a secondary school teacher, and then I became a social worker and a probation officer. And when I was training as a probation officer, I was probably about 27, I think. I met this particularly gorgeous young man, Grant Hindin-Miller.
I charge you all that each one of you concentrate all the thoughts of your heart on love and unity.
And when I met Grant at a residential training program for probation officers and social workers, and the very first thing that Grant said to me when I met him was he told me that he was a Baha'i, and I had never heard of the Baha'i faith before, so I said, what's that? Tell me about it. And so he did tell me about it, and I thought, that sounds interesting. You know, I had been raised as a Christian. As a child, I'd gone to an Anglican school, and I had turned away from religion in my teenage years and as a young adult, and I guess really I regarded myself as an atheist when, as a young adult, I'd gone to university and I'd kind of rejected my understanding of religion. I wasn't comfortable with it was really God that I had a problem with, and I think that was because my understanding of God was this kind of really limited understanding about God as the sort of, you know, old man with the beard kind of, you know, which just
Yes.
made no sense to me whatsoever. So anyway, so Grant shared with me these, the wonderful social teachings of the Baha'i faith, which made perfect sense to me, and I think really makes sense to anybody in today's world. And I was particularly attracted by teachings like the equality of men and women, and because I was a feminist, and I thought, oh wow, you know, that surprised me, because I didn't associate a kind of, you know, terrific concept like that as being part of a religion. That sounded quite unique to me. So I was comfortable with the social teachings of the Baha'i faith from the beginning. I must just add that I happened to marry this lovely young man, Grant, and he was a really, he was a great example of a Baha'i in his own personal life and in his kind of daily practice, and it had quite a strong influence on me. And of course I met a lot of Baha'is, and I, you know, felt that they were lovely people. But I did have this ongoing difficulty with God, and you know, you can't embrace a spiritually based faith if you don't accept the divine inspiration for it. So I accepted the teachings, but I had this challenge.
When I married Jenny, you know, she wasn't a Baha'i and had never heard of the Baha'i faith. In fact, the whole notion of getting married was quite foreign to her. But I said, if you want my body, you have to marry me. And so, and you know, we married, and she was obviously exposed to, you know, Baha'i friends and Baha'i teachings and thought. And after 2 years of marriage, we attended a wedding.
This wedding was the wedding of two Baha'i young people. The woman was Māori, the man was Pākehā, and the wedding was like a kind of mini United Nations of people. And one of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is unity and diversity and the oneness of humanity, which is a very beautiful teaching. And I was at this wedding, and I just, you know, here was this kind of incredibly diverse and beautiful gathering of people, and I was there, and just something just kind of happened to my heart. You know, I accepted all of these teachings in my head, but at this special occasion I just kind of knew in my heart, just suddenly, just I guess in my sort of soul really, that these teachings were real, and that this wonderful principle of the oneness of humanity, the unity of humanity, was a real spiritual, living, vibrant teaching. And it was at that moment that, you know, that I knew that this was true. It wasn't just a set of lovely ideas, it was a spiritually inspired
and that was
faith.
what got you over your problem with God.
And so I just knew in my heart, and I think, you know, you to embrace a faith, it's not just something you need to know in your head, you have to know it in your heart. And it was at that moment that I knew that it was true. And so that was my spiritual journey, and it's a different journey for everybody, but that was just what happened to me.
And so shortly after that you became
Well, I was a
an
Baha'i
official Baha'i.
at that moment. You
Right,
know, I realised
yes,
that in fact I was a Baha'i. Yes, yeah. And it's been a great journey. I mean, that was just the beginning of a long journey, you know, a long spiritual journey and adventure, which is continuing to this day, and it's been a great adventure, yes. The final ingredient in all that we do is love. The Baha'i writings state that where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, and there is always time. When people discuss the needs of vulnerable families and the important role of social services, no one mentions love. But it is love, our love for the young people with whom we work, our delight in their unique individuality and in their capacity for growth and change that is the truly transformational weapon in our armoury. Now, Grant assures me that inscribed on the walls of a monastery in Mount Athos are the following words: "Sister almond tree, speak to me of love." And the almond tree blossomed. And this is the joy of the work that we do, the blossoming of the young people and the young children that we're working with. In closing, I would like to share with you two final quotations from the Baha'i writings. "Every child is potentially the light of the world, and at the same time its darkness." Hence the importance of education and of work like ours in determining which outcome we will have. Each child whose future happiness and well-being is assured is a child who is not the darkness of the world. A child who is thriving and achieving his or her potential greatness and who is contributing positively and not draining the community resources through educational failure, through negative and antisocial behaviour. Here we have children and mothers who are breaking the cycle of intergenerational dysfunction and despair, who are potentially transforming a nation. Remember, children are the most precious treasure a community can possess, for in them are the promise and guarantee of the future. They bear the seeds of the character of future society, which is largely shaped by what the adults constituting the community do or fail to do with respect to children. They are a trust no community can neglect with impunity. So to finish, when we in New Zealand struggle to tackle our alarmingly high rates of child abuse and neglect, let us remember that the solutions to this problem are not merely economic or material as is so often suggested. It is education, it is love and support, hope, vision, whānau, community that really make the difference. After all, in the words of the African proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Thank you.
That seems like a good place to stop this program, Jenny. It's been wonderful having you with us for Baha'i On Air, and this school sounds like an absolutely amazing place, so keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thanks, Bev. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
You've been watching Baha'i On Air. We've been speaking with Jenny Hindin-Miller, the Director of Karanga Young Parents College in North Canterbury. We hope you'll join us again for Baha'i On Air. Pō mare ai.